Hello, hello. Thank you all for being here. We're so honored to have the opportunity to talk about such a special project, this film being sort of an accompaniment to an album that so many people have found so much meaning and connection to. I'm Alex, as they mentioned. We have Hana, Samuel, and Miller, and so we're really excited to dive in. If you haven't seen the film, we won't judge you, but we do hope that the conversation inspires you to go watch it. And so I think to kick things off, just would love to hear, Miller, about kind of how you first came to Samuel's work and what you really connected to.
Thank you. We were. Yeah. So we were working on the video for Colors and Shapes, and Sam made a video previously, a project previously with Mario Hugo. That I was very spellbound by, and I had just never seen anything like it before. But it was like very familiar at the same time. And I actually for Colors and Shapes, I played that video that he made behind Malcolm's track, and it just was perfect. It was kind of crazy. So then we reached out to Sam, and then that's really how it started. But there was this sort of magical synergy between I think Malcolm's music and Sam's work.
Yeah, I hadn't seen. I mean, I hadn't heard much of the music actually when you guys reached out, and I think I talked to your mom too. I think I talked to both of you right away, so it was a very familiar kind of thing. And my family are also musicians. My brother's a singer-songwriter, so I don't know. There was just a familiar feeling right away. And I think we have some do we have a slideshow? No, there. I just wanted to show some of the Colors and Shapes stuff.
And just to give a little context, Colors and Shapes was a song off of Faces.
Yes.
That was just released a couple of years ago in an official capacity after being circulated online for years and being a very beloved album sort of in the Mac Miller oeuvre.
Yeah, you guys told me about Ralph, right, the dog who ran away. This is Ralph. And Miller sent me this Dropbox of images, and this was the brief for the music video. Mm-hmm. There's a drawing by you of the boy and the bear, and I think the seeds of balloonerism started with that image of people with animal heads.
Yeah, that was when we were working on the Faces cover. That was the one that that drawing is what Malcolm wanted. He really wanted that to be the cover, and we kind of went back and forth about it, and it ended up being something else. But then it kind of came around, yeah. I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was Ralph. We made this video that was the story of Ralph ran away from Malibu from when he was living out there, right? And it was Colors and Shapes was this really sweet song, more like of a singing kind of song. I don't know. It was. I got really into it, and it was inspired by these '90s cartoons, like Little Nemo. It was one of them, with children flying in beds. It was all about dreams and stuff like that. So we made this.
But it was also kind of imagining where Ralph went.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
giving him a place beyond our imaginations that he could have gone to.
Yeah. I didn't mean to hijack that
No,
whole
no.
thing.
But I think, I mean, it's so special when you find a creative collaboration and a relationship like that where it just seems to work. And I think particularly in this capacity where you're creating a world for music that people also have their own connections to and wanting to create something that's a little abstract, when you feel like you find someone that is able to bridge that. It's such a special thing, and made sense for you guys to kind of revisit that relationship when you started thinking about the release of Balloonerism. And yeah, would love to know where those sort of initial conversations started.
Yeah, well, I guess it was just from like the not to back up, but with Colors and Shapes, seeing the way that Sam connected with the music was like really incredible. So I think there was a lot of trust that was just built in that process. So when it came time for Balloonerism, it had always felt like, it always felt like there's a film counterpart was really important. And Colors and Shapes is sort of a segue into Balloonerism in a way. It's like a shared body of work. They're very connected projects. So yeah, it wasn't really without hesitation, I guess. It was like, well, we're doing a film. Let's do a film. And let's do it with Sam, obviously. And then we
did it.
Yeah.
And we did it. It was 2 years. I think it was about 2 years. Mine, you should see.
But it's cool seeing like all of the the sketches leading into the trailer, and that's like, that's Sam in the laboratory dreaming up this incredible film.
Thanks, man.
I mean, that's like, yeah, that's awesome.
What were the pieces or sort of things that you shared with him initially starting the film that kind of like helped you begin to ideate Sam?
It was the organ.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there it is. What do you know?
Oh, right.
Yeah, tell him about this.
So so DJ's chord organ is one of the tracks on the album, and it was given to him by Daniel Johnston. And it was like a fixture of the Sanctuary studio.
And the Sanctuary was the studio in Malcolm's house where many, many things were recorded, including Faces and Balloonerism, and was like always a rotating cast of friends, collaborators, and always described by, SZA, Thundercat, Vince Staples as like a place that you could just come and express and explore your voice or musical ideas, and a real place of creativity.
Yeah, and there's something about like the sound of like hearing them playing the organ on that song. I think as like Josh Berg, Malcolm's engineer, would say is this very tender kind of entry point for some reason to what this thing would maybe become. This thing being the film, kind of felt like, and we just sort of talked about it being like Pandora's box a little bit, in a good way, or
Like Jumanji, kind of.
yeah, right.
Yeah, no, it was really easy. And when I was a teenager, I really loved Daniel Johnston. And I knew this story about, that's in the documentary, but where he flies a plane and he throws the keys out of the plane. So the story kind of came from that. It was like, we talked about it being maybe a wizard in Pittsburgh who was like telling stories, and then I don't know. It landed on this character throws the organ out of a plane. Maybe it's Daniel Johnston, or maybe it's the spirit, and he's like bestowing a mystical, magical thing full of potential upon this kid Timmy, and the seeds of the film came from that idea of like one artist passing on a magical object to another that's maybe dangerous as well as wonderful, and then these lines in Excelsior, one of the tracks in the album that early on felt like a story. Malcolm introduced 5 characters, and just like in one line each, the entire film kind of came out of the personalities described in that moment. I don't know. Do we have the? Oh, this is a different thing, but Karen.
My mom, our mom.
Yeah.
She sent this drawing that this was a couple nights ago, actually, that she sent this to us. That's just great.
Yeah, the what might happen monster, which,
right.
You know, it's like we didn't need to have seen this before making it, because it's sort of like that's what the film is about. It's when you're a little kid and you're like, what might happen? It's very scary, but also like super exciting. The werewolf next to you gives you a wedgie. You want to go to Australia? I don't know, but it there was that, and then there was this as well, which is like, you know, this is the last shot of the film, basically, is a balloon floating up past a cloud. These kinds of things, balloons and clouds and monsters and all this stuff, is like, it's so ingrained in us, and there's something really universal about it, and but it feels really free to make art around this stuff with that music. I don't know, that's always been how I felt.
I think when you first talked about the story, you explained the album to me as a journey of sounds and scenes and characters painted by sound. And it was such a interesting way to put it, because Sam, when he explains his work in you know, making visuals and CG, he always described his work as painterly. And you know, and when you look at his work, it is very painterly. It's, you know, there's a sensibility that is so crystal clear in what it's trying to tell you and how it's trying to invite you into a clear world and journey, but it's all fuzzy around the edges. It feels really fragile at times. It feels really half fabricated, but also real. And I think that sensibility of dream language, and also the you know, kind of how you two connected in piecing together these memorable items and memories, is really inherently how it got made. And it's so special to be part of a process where we never strayed from that vision, and that kind of stands out right now as we're looking through all the artifacts.
I think something that was always so present in Malcolm's lyrics and in his just sort of like way of being in the world too was like maintaining that sense of like childhood wonder. And I feel like Karen, their mom, saved so many things from both Miller and Malcolm's childhood and their artistic expressions. And it's so amazing to see the sort of things that he was interested in as a child that like carried over into his later years. And yeah, I think you did such an amazing job of sort of like bringing that into the film, and it feels like the story of the kids and their sort of excitement but also anxieties about what it means to grow up was such an incredible starting point that made so much sense for the music. And can you speak to a little bit too about sort of now having these characters, how you started to piece together their journey with these different lyrics and with the sort of different tracks that you chose, and kind of how you made those selections?
Yeah, sure. Let me see. Yeah, so it was hard because the album is really tangential and it's like a lot of storytelling inside of the album, and so it was hard not to kind of to try to think of a bigger arc and try to find the central theme of the record, or like a theme to emphasize. And I think that all clicked, and that's when I think that's when I wrote out the real script for it, and the treatment was on Tomorrow Never Knows. There's a line, but do you feel as big as your shadow? Which then almost was like, oh, that's almost like the subtitle of the film. And it reminded me of the Sorcerer's Apprentice, the old Mickey Mouse, where he gets the broomstick, and then there's a shot of him and his shadow getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he starts to be scared of it. And that just, it was also like this very intuitive, just very universal metaphors and language. And I don't know what it is about animals, but like that was the same. Yeah, it was the same with Ralph and with this one, to make them as just innocent things that are very kind of soulful to me. And it didn't take a lot of time to think about like, okay, they're gonna turn into animals. The album has all these great little stories that can then be part of them growing up, and because a lot of the tracks on the record are about getting into various kinds of trouble, so that framework worked really well. To start with Excelsior, this introduction of 5 kids, maybe pick up in different stories of them growing up, and then kind of resolve with the feeling of being overwhelmed by your own kind of potential and what you might become. That's where it landed.
Yeah. So I guess like maybe when we're looking at the list of songs too, when we started, I think the initial dream was like, wow, let's do something for the whole album. Naturally, right? That's like where we wanted to go first.
Always dream big.
Yeah. And I think like considering the level of animation that Sam does, we realized, okay, well, that we would have to choose a smaller set of tracks. And I guess I just think it's really cool how Sam, like, he needed to have the vision. It needed to be his connection with the album to really know and then execute the story. So I think it's cool how you were able to, you weren't given this like linear path of like, here's the first song and then we're going to go through the whole thing. It's like going through the album, connecting with it, and then finding the story is
it was great to get to do that. Yeah. And it's also just it's like, I feel that way with all his music. It's so kind of cinematic. I don't want to say surprisingly, but kind of like for music that's so, it's lyrical, and you'd normally maybe find that hard to create film behind, but when he becomes the narrator, you can really, it's just a really intuitive process. And the track listing was really nice to find that, like, that shortened version of it that worked.
I've heard you mention throughout, like picking up on his line about being an illustrator.
Yeah.
I think that was something that seemed to carry you a little bit throughout.
Yeah, because I was always trying to find like some validation for doing it, I felt like there was just camaraderie in what he was. Yeah, that he's an illustrator, and it felt like he was writing like comic strips sometimes, and there is that one line where he says, "I'm an illustrator." And then I was like, okay, then this whole thing is fine. We can do animation. We have permission.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was a lot of stuff like that, which is. you
I mean,
know.
it is such a unique experience to be creating a new world for something that's been out for a while, but getting to put your own sort of ideas into it. And I think that's something that was so special about his music too, is like while he was illustrating these scenes and ideas, there's also always space for people to find their own connection to it and also like see their own experiences reflected in it.
Yeah. It was, I mean, I think the thing that was, you know, it just made it all possible was just that we were making something without it. Had a lot of like emotional pressure, but very little kind of, I don't know, kind of capitalist pressure or something like that. It didn't have a lot of strategy. I don't know, maybe people would disagree with that at the record label, but it did feel like it was like, yeah, it was like a passion project, but not with a lot of pressure in the right way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of how it got made. Like, if you really think about resources and time and how are we going to get this done, there was no magic button to just the ingenuity of people, the creative power of trying to solve those problems. But really, what drove everyone was the opportunity to participate, the opportunity to play. You know, as artists who often work in a really kind of confined parameter with other kinds of deadlines and pressure, you know, everyone was so game and recognized it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And, you know, Sam also, it's I think to support Sam as an artist, you kind of have to get into his head and really anticipate where he wants to go. And it's really hard to do that. Like, you can't create that, you know, I don't know how you do it, and obviously I've worked with you for so long. So our job is sort of like a tightrope of like, I want to get inside his head, I need to know where he's going, but I also can't get in the way. And we have to figure that out. And there was absolutely no shortchanging that creative power. And I actually really think Miller as the third collaborator, where your guidance and your guiding principle was really respect and honoring what Malcolm created and left for us, and really recognizing the kindred spirits of the artists at play. And we really use that as our guiding power too, to get us to the finish line.
Thank you, that means a lot.
No, it is, I mean, their music is such a creative realm, but there also is this very real world pressures of it also being a business, and it's so unique to have these opportunities where artists can collaborate in a way that really is just about expressing and being truthful to the music or to what it brings up. Yeah, and I feel like that was so much the ethos of, as we said, like the sanctuary and Malcolm's music too. That's really special. So sort of taking those like lyrics as a starting point and then starting to dive in, what was the process kind of as you were developing the story, but then also developing the visual side of things? And I know Miller mentioned you kind of like those were all your sketches and things. Curious about how you got into that.
Yeah. Let's see, what do we have? Oh, yeah. We painted, so it was a really foolish way of working, but we drew it. I scribbled the whole thing in boards, really rough boards, and then we had this really nice process of design and painting stuff, and these are some of the like color keys that came early on, and honestly, a lot of the work was done at this point. But there was humongous kind of blank, like gaps in all of this. And we used really quite like complex animation, 3D techniques and software, but in a very incorrect way. And therefore, for instance, we animated the entire film without the actual characters.
Oh, wow.
we put the we did really design the characters after animating the film. So lots of things happened a few times. It was a really, really fluid process, and I didn't share that much with you.
I was actually just gonna. I was curious. I am curious how much I didn't get to see until. Because I know by the time that I did see the initial and their stills, they're incredible. They're the most beautiful things I've ever seen. But I want to see the rough stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all of the characters that you created have such an emotion to them. I mean, I've seen this one so many times, and honestly, I could just cry. He's so sweet, and there's such a tenderness. It was interesting hearing you mention the tenderness of the chord organ, because I feel like that comes so much in the characters and in the animation. But again, the still before, the backgrounds as well, they're just so otherworldly, and there's so much going on. So when you say that you brought in the characters, was it that you were developing sort of the scenes first and then bringing the characters in later? Or?
Yeah, the characters, we just didn't quite. That was a tricky thing, because I think animated kids, stop motion can just work. Computer animation is dangerous territory for things becoming uncanny. I think that what we landed on is a kind of okay type of uncanniness, because I think it's unusual enough. But there was that was my fear all along, was that it would be too dark. And not the right kind of dark, and that was something we had to keep working on until the very end. So even after it was animated, incredible team in Paris doing the character animation, and they had an 8-month phase of working on this, of being up all night, and they didn't see anything in color. Everything they were doing is on really simplified rigs and stuff like that. We lit that stuff, and we started seeing the renders, the final looking stuff, and it wasn't there yet, and so we ended up having to kind of rework, the proportions changed, things you would never do at a prop, at whatever Pixar or something. But yeah, I think it, and also a lot of these other characters that, the giant turtle, which is the turtle of time, who's kind of on their heels through the story because they're racing ahead and trying to become adults. It was sort of a blank slate in a lot of ways, and really came together very late in the process, and as did many of the secondary kind of magical characters.
Yeah, I can imagine, as you mentioned, you sort of had these lyrics that you picked out that were very illustrative of scenes, but then figuring out the sort of transitions between those scenes and the characters like the turtle who sort of reoccur throughout and really create that through line as well, so that it's not just a series of scenes, but it does become this more holistic arc. Yeah, I can imagine it was a particular challenge.
Yeah. And it was really nice, because the writing of it is weaving in and out of kind of the lyrics, the literal interpretation of the lyrics, on Funny Papers, the Funny Pages.
Funny papers.
Funny Papers, I got it right.
You're good.
I have a dyslexia on the lyric. It's a kind of we're showing the lyrics of the song, roughly. And then some songs, it's something that's completely running parallel to the song lyrics, but that way of weaving in and out of them. There was a lot of material there to write from, and some of the characters are not exactly from the lyrics, but they feel like they belong. I don't know. It was all very intuitive.
But also it's intuitive for Sam, but for everyone else, who the CG computer animation process is very linear, and you build one brick at a time, and you sort of don't always want to go backwards. You want to go forwards and pass the baton forward to the next sort of layer of expertise. So Sam's process has always been, for as long as I've known you, to really maybe intentionally deconstruct it, like willfully sort of go against the grain. And in that process, obviously, you find such beauty and find like an amazing place that not a lot of people can arrive. But I think what's amazing is sort of all the artists that jumped on board and played along in that kind of sandbox, which, you know, was pure just trusting Sam. You know, everyone's sort of figuring out their own intuition, but really kind of taking a lead from you and trusting that we're somehow going to get there.
Yeah, no, it was 80 people who worked on it in total.
85, yeah.
85. Throughout the whole process, from animation to you know, editing, color, everything, and there was a few people who were there, like Ray Zhu was there till the very end with me.
Yeah.
That was the last like month. I think it was just the two of us, and yeah, some people I think had a hard time with my chaos in the process, and some people, but I feel like everyone really enjoyed working on it. It felt, yeah, just like it was a really passionate team and amazing effort from so many people kind of across the world.
I know animation is such a layered process. I feel like sometimes people don't quite realize just the number of steps and the number of people it really takes to create something like this. And makes a lot of sense that it wasn't a feature as well. And I know you guys worked on the ending together a bit too. Can you kind of speak to that moment? And
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, well, it was like the final sort of stages, I feel like the last like couple months maybe. And I don't know if Sam like should have brought me in, but he did. And we kind of started talking about, I'm glad he did, because we got to sort of explore what the ending was together. And I think it was trying to find the right balance of like tone, like the right note to end it on, and it was really fun.
Yeah, you animated. You guys.
I mean, I chopped up some of Braulio's really good work and put it on a timeline. But
Braulio did the cover artwork for the album, or sorry, the design.
Yeah. So Braulio Amato did the packaging, and then he participated a lot with like the like all the titles
inside the film. Yeah.
I mean, he was across the whole release really, and then Alim Smith painted the original cover,
which we tried to integrate into the film, but it felt forced. So
right.
I thought this was the crucial thing, is we'd gotten to the end of the film and it left you on kind of a very dark note.
But there's something. Sorry.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about this last night, honestly, about like the cover and how it was sort of like Malcolm commissioned that cover, right? So it was like this certain sensibility that he connected with, and and I think you were like still working in that same space of like abstraction, you know, and that was sort of one of like the initial cues to working together. Was you had some components of your work that were sort of like Dali-esque, and that was, you know, Malcolm was really into Dali, so I think it all ended up in a way feeling connected to the, you know, spirit of the album and the, you know, the cover and
and what he was into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the end, it's just kind of wild that.
Oh, wait, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I was
just
just remembering. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Just that you because it was kind of needed an uplift at the end, and so we had the balloon float up.
Yeah.
And then Karen sent us this drawing of that image that you basically we're like, we should do this. And
Right.
then
Right.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah. We were in that space of trying to figuring it out, and a literal balloon.
Yeah.
Like goes across the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like really small and sweet. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna send you a video.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was cool.
I think that is so important. I love how you're speaking about sort of like finding the ending tone, but also not being afraid to explore all of these other sort of themes and emotions and like some of the darker aspects in the film, because that was such a big part of the music too, was just being able to talk about the things that no one wants to talk about, and giving that space. But at his court, like, Malcolm did always bring it back to sort of this lighter energy and like a real just enthusiasm for creating things with people that, definitely comes through here. Yeah, no, it's a very strong ending scene. Again, if you haven't seen it, must watch immediately.
Oh, I forgot about this stuff. I mean, yeah, this was just other inspiration for the film. If you see it, these become some characters. These are actual, like, promotional, creepy rabbits in Pittsburgh. Did you used to go did you ride on the Jackrabbit?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, you told me about it. The story came out of like three.
Yeah.
You're like the Jackrabbit in Pittsburgh and Oregon, and that was basically it.
Trying to think. There's I think the Jackrabbit's the old wooden roller coaster.
Right.
And you picked up on like these, and like the Pittsburgh trolley, which is this old artifact, mode of transportation that you incorporated into the film. And I think just like Sam's ability to, and that was like the initial project, you're like working with these objects in space and creating these worlds that felt so meaningful. It was cool to see how that continued with our process of like, hey, send me a folder of like objects and sketches and little things, and then you're able to just create a whole world from that, while also just totally connecting with the album, in your own way, which I feel like that was what made it all. Honestly, that's what made it possible, is like the way that you and the team were able to just have your own vision for, and have your own connection to it.
I grew up with a lot of objects and stuff around. My dad was a collector of things,
And you have a musical background yourself.
That's
I feel like it also plays into the way you're able to pick up on these like tertiary elements of the music and create a whole space like past the lyrics. It goes further into it.
Yeah, definitely.
I also feel like animation is a medium in which, because it's so about imagination, that you can get away with a lot, but you will tend to draw from these, real life moments, memories, artifacts. More, and incorporate that into the cinematic universe. And I think that that's kind of the power of the medium, and your just experience with it can really make it shine. And really, I agree that the sensibility of Malcolm's music and the lyrics and the audio, like the music, sonic world that he's created is something that we are invited into, and the worlds that Sam creates visually is also an invitation to just participate into the threads of relatable, memories, both sad and tragic and beautiful and dark. And, personally, I feel like I've watched it so many times, and I kind of always come out of it having become a different person. I can kind of, I'm a bigger person every time I step into it and come out of it. And it's like the chicken or the egg. Like, was this film inspired by the music? Clearly, yes. But also, was the music destined for this kind of world? And it feels like I don't really need that answer to that question, because I watched it and I just feel it. And that's kind of the gift that I feel like is the film to the fans. And I hope that if you do watch it, or if you have watched it, you've experienced it at that level.
Oh, that's so nice too.
Yeah, it does seem like you can't imagine it any other way now. Like it just feels like they were meant to find each other, and also for people to then go and watch and listen and find their own meaning in it as well. Very special. So
It is. I swear, it all feels like group hug.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Like never-ending group.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yeah, let's do Q&A.
all right, and we have some time for some questions now as well. Can you explain more about the connection between Mac and Daniel Johnston, how their relationship with their inner child resonates in their art?
That's a really nice question. That feels kind of so personal to them in a way that I think it's hard to explain it. From what I remember, though, I guess I kind of like admire their connection. I don't know if I can really explain it, though, if that's fair to say. But I think it is like very interesting that the two of them had this moment of time where they were like super excited about working together and making things together. And, I think it's like, I feel like I kind of imagine like that it was sort of during this time where Malcolm's like innermost artist was really on the outside in this really beautiful way. And I feel like Daniel Johnston is maybe that way too, and maybe that brought them together in some way.
Yeah, there definitely seemed like a shared sort of just desire to live fully in that sort of very like vulnerable and creative space.
Yeah.
Which is really beautiful. Can you name an Easter egg in the film that you may not catch on the first watch? So many, I feel like.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I don't want to make it hard, but the slide from Blue. Oop. Right, microphone. The slide from Blue Slide Park is the slide which Timmy, who's the hero, who becomes a rat, has to, when he wants to go back to his childhood, he has to slide down Blue Slide Park, slide and find his way into his inner world.
Yeah, I like the kind of like red character who drops the organ at the beginning.
They do.
Is based on it was on. Sorry, I'm like looking at the timer. It was the cover art. Like Malcolm made this like little cover art of a balloon, like this red balloon character in his iTunes playlist that he had for a while. That was, and then that was something that we shared with you, and then you found a way to incorporate it in this really subtle
2 seconds on screen. The first moment of the film is based on that.
Yeah.
On that guy.
Yeah.
The iTunes playlist guy.
And that
there's
was
a
like
lot.
the cover before there was cover art.
Yeah, before he commissioned the cover, that was kind of what he had, and yeah,
That's so amazing that you were able to incorporate it and give it its moment.
yeah.
Love that. What was your favorite memory from the process of creating Balloonerism, the film?
I think that so in France, animation is a very serious profession. Like clowning is also, for the French are like that. And so all the character animators who didn't, they weren't doing color, they were literally just articulating the acting. They were all filming themselves. They took this project so seriously, which was incredible. Like, arguing with me, fighting about things, fighting about intention and moments in a way that I'd never experienced with animation crews. When they finished their work, we had like a watching party together, and it was just so serious, and people were crying, and it was just like it exposed me to just a level of seriousness about this stuff that I hadn't seen that much of in prior to that. I always felt like, of course, we're all passionate, but kind of like working away in our bedrooms and our studios, and it was like, no, these people are like, this is very important work we're doing, and that was it for me.
And also, so members at Hornet who were, various stages involved. There are some artists who were really also trained on new technologies and new software on the project. And that was our attempt at really kind of this deconstructed methodology of creating, real amazing CG animation. And also when I screened with them, and they're really young. Some of them are very young. Some of them are their first really long, real project, and sharing tears with them because they saw their name listed on the credits, and just how proud they were, and saying that's me, and I got to be a part of it. That was really wonderful. Yeah.
I love hearing you also say about how people filmed themselves to get the characters, because honestly, I feel like you feel that emotion in the film, and so it makes so much sense. And also, I think speaking to just the really human aspect of people getting to learn and explore their own creativity throughout this process is super special too. Miller, do you have any favorites?
It's hard to. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I guess one thing that maybe comes to mind is that there's definitely I get scared. I get are we doing the right thing? And I think. Well, I guess first sorry, I'm really great at this.
You're doing great.
I think being able to just really trust Sam and his team, and seeing them sort of interpret and connect with Malcolm's music and create something new is crazy. Yeah, I'll just say that. Yeah.
What do you hope people take away from watching Balloonerism and listening to the album? Oh, sorry. Do you want to go next?
I hope they have a good time. Yeah, no, I think I feel optimism about animation. I don't know. I saw Flow the other night. It's so soulful. I'm so close to the film that we made that it's hard for me to have a lot of perspective on it, but I do think it's unusual, and I think maybe a good time could happen in the years to come with sort of new types of filmmaking, and that's what Flow made me think. You can make something without studios. So I don't know. I hope it inspires people to make stuff.
Yeah, I feel like anytime, you're putting out a piece of art, if it can sort of make someone feel like they too can be an artist, or they too can create something and give it to the world, like that's so special. And I feel like, again, just really ties back to Malcolm's legacy. I think the first time I heard about any of the music from this project was SZA relating a story, and she was just talking about the day that Malcolm got this chord organ and how excited he was about it, and how she was there and Thundercat was there and Josh was there, and he would just start playing and wanted her to sing, and she felt so nervous, but he was like, no, just go, like try anything. And I think that's like such a special thing that people can take away from this film and from the music, is like, don't be afraid to try. And there's so much value to be found in the exploration, in the process, even if you don't know where it's going, but just to kind of put yourself in that space and have that freedom.
Yeah, and I say this trepidatiously at the last 3 minutes, but there was not a single piece of AI that was used. And, when you go into the subreddits and you sort of hear the skeptics, I feel like I have to say that. And the only thing I would say about that conversation, because I don't want to have that here, is, you can't really take away the process of creative challenges and from humanity, and also how those challenges drive us forward, and how that then becomes creations like this, both from a music perspective and a visual perspective. Having experienced this, I don't think you can take that away from us for our evolution as artists. So that's what I kind of feel, and that may not be a takeaway from watching it, but just sort of to put that out there for some of the questions that may exist about the topic of AI.
A very human-centric story all around. And one last question: what does honoring Mac's legacy mean to you all?
It's kind of related to the last question, too. But I guess the hope in something like this, I don't know if it's so specific as much as just like connecting with him. That's kind of it.
I think he gave so much of himself to his music and to all of the people around him. And I think for me, it's always thinking about just like living as truthfully to yourself as possible, because I feel like that was really what he was doing and aspiring to do, and to also share with people to make them feel comfortable to live that way as well. So I'll definitely always kind of have that in the back of my mind, and think to take that with me.
I agree. For me, it was a gift that I received, and I'm happy to be able to gift it back out.
Yeah, I never got to meet him, but I just had this really profound sense from all of you, and also meeting your family, that he was like just a mensch and a good soul, and that was all that's just what I felt the whole time, and that's why this has all felt okay. He just seemed like somebody full of goodness, and I think that's what it's about for me as well.
Yeah, all very honored to be here. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Please watch the film, listen to the album, and take that with you as well.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.